Journal continues.
We welcome back to our desk Democratic Congressman Ted Lieu of California. Before your political career, Congressman, you worked as a prosecutor. The term quid pro quo has come up a lot this week. Some of our viewers mentioning that they've seen it or not seen it in this story about the Ukraine phone call. Can you just explain what quid pro quo is and how you prove that?
Sure. So as a former prosecutor, we don't look at individual items of evidence in isolation. We look at everything in context. So in this case, Donald Trump had halted military aid to Ukraine that Congress had specifically approved because it was going to help our national security interests. Ukraine was pushing back against one of our adversaries. And then a week later, Donald Trump calls the Ukrainian leader. And right after the Ukrainian leader raises the issue of military aid, Trump requests a favor. And that's actually two favors, one of which is to investigate Biden. So what a quid pro quo would mean is, I halted military aid. I'm now requesting you to do me a favor. And what's implied there is, if you don't do this favor, you're not getting this money.
What does this whistleblower complaint that was released yesterday, that you've obviously read and seen, where is it leading you next in terms of who you want to talk to about it?
So whistleblower complaint was very detailed, and what was stunning about it is the whistleblower complaint identified that call between Donald Trump and the Ukrainian leader, all the elements, and that was verified by the actual rough transcript the White House put out. So that lends a lot of credibility to the whistleblower complaint. In addition, the Inspector General, who Trump had appointed himself, deemed the complaint urgent and credible. And the whistleblower complaint lays out not just this call where Trump essentially tries to get the Ukrainian leader to investigate his political opponent. He also alleges a massive cover-up where the White House knew that what was said on that call was wrong. They put it into a whole different lockdown system for very sensitive information related to national security. This call had nothing really to do with national security. It had to do with political considerations. And a lot of people were involved in that cover-up, and we want to know who they were as well.
Putting your prosecutor hat back on, does it weaken your case here that the whistleblower acknowledges that they were not a direct witness to most of the events described?
It would have weakened the case if the White House hadn't released its own rough transcript that verified exactly what the whistleblower basically said. The whistleblower provides a big roadmap for Congress to investigate. The House Intel Committee is a lead on this. They're going to track down all the different witnesses. And the administration can either provide the information if they have nothing to hide, or if they don't, then American people can draw the inference they're hiding a lot from both Congress and the American people.
What is the Judiciary Committee's role now? You just said that House Intel will take the lead here. Judiciary had obviously taken the lead when it came to the Mueller investigation and various other aspects. So what do you do now on the Judiciary Committee?
So House Intel is going to take the lead on doing the investigation of this Ukrainian scandal. At some point, they will conclude it and send the information to Judiciary, and then we will look at it, and if necessary, we will hold a hearing and draft articles of impeachment and have a markup on it.
And that's because articles of impeachment have to go through the Judiciary Committee, or is that just how it's usually been done?
If there were going to be articles of impeachment, it would first come out of the Judiciary Committee. That is correct.
Do you think that those articles will be narrowly focused on Ukraine, or could you include some of what you were already looking into when it came to the Mueller investigation and other topics?
I don't know the answer to that. We're going to see all their evidence and then make a decision. I do want to say that impeachment, like the power to declare war, are two of the gravest powers of Congress. It should never be our first option. It always has to be our last option when we don't have any other choice. So we have to take this with the solemn responsibilities of what members of Congress need to do, which is to assess the facts and make a decision based on our constitutional duties and responsibilities.
Do you have any sense of how long that process could take? Something that might happen before the end of the year, by the 2020 elections?
I believe if there were going to be any articles of impeachment that were to be passed, it would happen before the end of the year.
Congressman Ted Lieu taking your phone calls for about the next 22 minutes on the Washington Journal. Donna is in Westerville, Ohio, Republican. You're up first. Donna, you with us? Then we'll go to Anita in Severna Park, Maryland, a Democrat. Good morning.
Hi. I
would just like to say that everyone keeps talking about Biden firing, calling for the firing of the prosecutor and how his son was under investigation. As I understand it, it was an entire year since his son had been under any kind of investigation when Biden started calling for the resignation of this prosecutor. And he wasn't alone in calling for the resignation of the prosecutor. There were several in the European Union who were also calling for it. Also, last May, Ukraine said that both Bidens were cleared of wrongdoing. So I don't understand why they keep picking on him, except it's what they did with Hillary. The Republicans just won't admit that the president was asking for interference in our election.
Thank you for raising those points. People are certainly entitled to their opinions, but they're not entitled to their own facts. And you're absolutely correct. In this case, the Ukrainians actually came out and said, look, Hunter Biden can't be held responsible for acts of this company that occurred 2 years before he even went on the board of this company. The Ukrainians also said they did an investigation, found there was nothing improper for either Hunter Biden or Joe Biden. And you're also right that at the time, it wasn't just Joe Biden calling for the prosecutor to resign. It was the European Union, a lot of people looking at this, saying that this prosecutor needs to go because he was not doing the job he was supposed to be doing. But just based on a timeline, there is no evidence whatsoever that there was any wrongdoing by the Bidens. This is simply a political hit job. And you see the president was trying to get the Ukrainians to launch another bogus investigation into his political opponent.
Remind folks who Yuriy Lutsenko is.
He's a corrupt person that both Biden and a lot of the European Union wanted to get removed.
The Washington Post reporting on some of his first comments since these revelations about the phone call and the conversation. This is from the story of the Washington Post yesterday. He's also the former Ukrainian prosecutor, as you note. He said, from the perspective of Ukrainian legislation, Hunter Biden did not violate anything. The Washington Post noting it being his first interview, as we said.
And in fact, to even follow up on that, because Biden was calling for him to be removed, it actually was going to put more light on this company that he was allegedly not investigating. So actually it was going to be against Biden's own self-interest for him to do that. So there's really no there in what the Republicans are making up right now.
Brian in Michigan, independent, good morning.
Yeah, I want to stay on topic, but Representative, you just said Koshenko was a corrupt person. You have no proof of that, and you know that. Let me get on to the major point. You have some principals that are still involved in all of this, meaning Robert Mueller, Rosenstein, Sean Henry, the legal group Perkins Coie. This is all heading back to Uranium One, sir. This is all heading back that way. You cannot sell enriched uranium, and I really don't care to hear about the CFIUS board or Timothy Geithner or any of that garbage. You cannot sell enriched uranium, turn around a few years later and act like Russia's the worst people in the world. You can't do it.
Congressman, you want to talk Uranium One?
So you're entitled to your opinions. I actually have no idea what you're talking about.
Tim in Florida is a Republican. Good morning.
Hi. Well, I got a couple questions. I'm going to try to stay on topic with Mr. Lieu. You claim that you're a prosecutor, okay? And as a prosecutor, you should know that the information that the whistleblower put in his complaint is all hearsay, which is inadmissible. So how can you base that Trump did something wrong in the conversation when you got somebody that's making a claim that he never even heard the conversation?
Thank you for your question. Again, you're entitled to your opinion, but not your own facts. As a former prosecutor, I know that when a suspect makes admissions against his own self-interest, that is totally admissible. That is a classic hearsay exception, absolutely admissible in court. All their stunning admissions that Donald Trump made, either on national TV or in this phone call. Second, Yes, the House released the rough transcript of this phone call that verified exactly what the whistleblower said. So at this point, it's really sort of irrelevant what the whistleblower said about the phone call because we've got the summarized notes of that phone call. Get it?
The Washington Post today, the New York Times op-ed page has a column by David Brooks. He's the headline of that column, he's guilty of impeachment. He's guilty, but impeachment is a mistake. So focusing on the politics of this for a second, one thing that David Brooks writes is that Democrats are playing Trump's game here. He says Trump has no policy agenda. He's incompetent at improving the lives of the American citizens or even his own voters, but he's good at one thing, waging reality TV personality wars against coastal elites. So now over the next few months, he gets to have a personality war against Nancy Pelosi and Gerald Nadler. The Democrats are having a pretty exciting and substantive presidential primary season. This is what democracy is supposed to look like. Why they would want to distract from that is beyond reason. Trump versus Nadler is exactly the contrast that Trump wants to draw.
So I have no idea whether if we do form articles of impeachment, if it would help Trump, hurt Trump, be absolutely neutral. My belief is we shouldn't do impeachment for political reasons. We also should not do impeachment for political reasons. It's just got to be based on the facts and the law. We'll assess what the evidence is. It needs to be our last option. But if we conclude that the President of the United States halted military aid to a critical ally at a critical time, and then in the context of that stopping of military aid, had a conversation with the Ukrainian leader to investigate an American citizen for political purposes, that is a high crime.
Anthony, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, independent. Good morning.
Good morning. Mr. Lieu, it's not working. It's not working. What y'all saying to us and what you trying to tell us, and I used to vote Democrat, it's not working, sir. You trying to tell us that what Mr. Trump has said, that all the stuff he was saying, which he was trying to tell get the Ukrainian people, no, sir, we not believing that. We not believing that. I'm sorry.
What do you believe, Anthony?
I don't believe that. I don't believe Mr. Trump was trying to do the thing that they are trying to say Mr. Trump is doing.
So again, you're entitled to your opinion. I'm just going to tell you what the actual rough transcript of the phone call said. It shows that after the Ukrainian leader raised the issue of military aid from the United States, specifically Javelin missiles, that was going to help the country push back against its adversary, which is also our adversary, Trump immediately asked him for a favor. One of the favors Trump asked for is to investigate Trump's political opponent, Biden. And this is done in the context of Donald Trump having halted military aid that Congress approved to Ukraine a week before this phone call. None of those facts are disputed. You can draw whatever conclusions you want, but the facts are staring you in the face.
Brenda, Houston, Texas, Democrat. Good morning.
Oh, my goodness. I cannot begin to tell you, Mr. Lieu, how it is my absolute pleasure to speak with you this morning. John, I'll let you know when I'm done. Mr. Lieu, I want you to know, and you tell all of your other congressmen and women, that the American people support you. We stand with you. He's going to fight dirty. You stand tall because God is with you, because you have the truth on your side. Let us know what we need to do. Get to the different organizations, to get out to the different communities, what you want us to do to support you, because I'm behind you. I'm retired. I'll do whatever you need. And also to the Republican, the ones that Trump supporters, there's a silver lining. There's a silver lining. And the silver lining is Donald Trump has finally beat President Obama. He's going to be impeached. And President Obama was never impeached. Thank you so much for taking my call. Have a great day.
So thank you for your call. I do want to note that this is not a partisan issue. What we have here is the American president soliciting foreign interference of our elections, of a foreign power. He did that in the context of halting hundreds of millions of dollars of critical military aid that Congress had specifically approved. This is really an American issue, and that's why you now see 2 Republican governors come out and publicly say they support this impeachment inquiry. You had Congressman Turner, a Republican of Ohio, yesterday saying in open public hearing that what the president did was not okay.
Hanna Clarksburg, Maryland, Democrat, good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, I've been a Democrat for 36 years, and I have to tell you, I've never been more disgusted with my own party. It has been hijacked by communists, Marxists, and socialists. It is no longer the Democratic Party of JFK or my parents or grandparents. And Lou, you should be completely ashamed of yourself. When does hearsay become the new standard in which we destroy people? You attempted to do this with Kavanaugh during the hearings, with Christina Ford, and I got assaulted, but I don't remember when or where or how. I mean, this is just ridiculous. And here's the credibility. Here's the credibility. You have no integrity, sir. You have no integrity because you turn a blind eye and a deaf ear to what Biden did with Ukraine. He withheld $1 billion until the prosecutor that was investigating his son was fired. That's quid pro quo.
Thank you for your call. So let me address some of the things that you have raised. Hearsay is absolutely admissible if it's an admission against self-interest. So when Donald Trump says he is asking for a favor of the Ukrainian leader to investigate his political opponent, that is absolutely admissible. It is an exception to the hearsay rule because it's basically an admission against Trump's own self-interest. But let's just take the whole hearsay thing away because guess what? We've got the actual summarized transcript of their phone call that says Trump did exactly what the whistleblower said Trump did. Thank you.
Angela, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, independent, good morning.
Good morning. I am still for Trump. They've been after Trump ever since he got in office.
And Angela, you just got to listen through your phone and talk through your phone. Turn down your television. We'll let you figure that out while we go to Teresa in Wyoming, a Republican. Good morning.
All I have to say is thank you, Mr. Lieu. You hold your head up and you be proud.
Thank you for your call. I appreciate that.
Less than 10 minutes before the House comes in for the day. After today, the House is headed to 2 weeks of congressional recess. I wonder what your plans are over recess when it comes to this issue. Are you holding town halls? Do you expect this to be the focus?
That's a great question. So the House Intel Committee is the lead on this issue. They're going to continue investigating. But there's a lot of other work the House is doing. We have introduced a major bill to lower prescription drug prices. This is going to be something we'll be talking about in the next 2 weeks. We also have introduced legislation on background checks for guns that we've already passed, bipartisan. It's before the U.S. Senate. We're going to be putting pressure on the U.S. Senate to take that up for a vote. And we also have bills that we hope become laws on election security and to also root out corruption. We're going to be talking about those issues as well.
On the gun legislation, we've obviously been waiting for a while from the promised legislation from the White House. I wonder what your thoughts are about cooperation on some sort of strengthening of background checks in the wake of this story and how the president has responded to congressional inquiries about it.
So for a long time, the NRA would say, background checks would never have stopped any of these gun crimes. And it turns out the last mass shooting, background checks, had it been universal, would in fact have stopped it. And so we have a classic.
Which one are you referring to?
The very last one where the person actually had tried to get a gun, was denied by a background check, and then got it through a sale that was not. So what we have now is not only bipartisan support, we have an actual case of background checks that if it was universal would have worked. It's before the U.S. Senate. We're calling Mitch McConnell to take that up for a vote.
And then the other question is about government funding. The Senate passing yesterday that continuing resolution to keep the government funded for another 6 weeks. I wonder your thoughts on being able to come up with a bill that can pass the Senate and get signed by the president to continue to fund the government for fiscal 2020.
So I do support the short-term CR, continuing resolution, to have the government funded. I do believe when we come back, we do have to focus on making sure we have a longer-term funding strategy, because it makes it very hard for our agencies, for our military, and for other stakeholders to plan when we only have these short-term CRs.
Can Congress focus on that at the same time that there's going to be a whole lot of focus on an impeachment inquiry?
Yes, so we have multiple committees going on. We have our Appropriations Committee, we have a Budget Committee, we have committees that are focusing on their missions. Right now, House Intel will take the lead on the Ukrainian issue, but all this other work in terms of making sure that we reduce healthcare costs for American people, that we increase their wages, put them into good jobs, that's all going to continue.
About 5 minutes before the House comes in, we'll take you there live. When they do, until then, your phone calls with Congressman Ted Lieu of California. Robert is in New Mexico, a Democrat. Good morning.
Morning. How you doing? Thank you, C-SPAN. I love your coverage. And I appreciate you guys for doing this. And it's nice to talk to someone within the reins of our Congress. Senor, it's good to see you. I just think you're playing into Trump's hands. Everybody's playing into Trump's hands because attention is attention. And when he gets attention, he thrives on it, whether it's good or bad. So all that needs to stop, and we need to do something about the infrastructure of our country. All our roads have potholes. All our bridges are crumbling. I'm in New Mexico, so we're going to get the last dollar. It's just how it is. But we need to concentrate on what we can do. And I'm sad to say this, but Trump's going to win if they keep fighting each other the way they are. All the Democrats are raising their hands saying they're going to give illegal immigrants free health care when we got to pay for our own health care. Man, it's playing into Trump's hands, y'all. Y'all need to get together and stop all the bickering and fighting and quit talking about Donald Trump. And
Congressman Lieu.
I appreciate your call. So in terms of infrastructure, last term I introduced legislation that would fund our infrastructure needs. It was tagged at $2 trillion. Even some within my own caucus were saying, oh, that's too much. But then the President of the United States, in a State of the Union speech later, floated the number of $1.5 trillion. And I said, see, I wasn't that much off. Because it turns out, according to the American Society of Civil Engineers, we have a $4 trillion infrastructure deficit in the next 10 years. We absolutely have to work on infrastructure. I agree with you. So our congressional committees are, in fact, working on infrastructure. And unfortunately, the White House earlier this year walked away, took all their marbles, went home. We're getting signals they may want to come back and talk about infrastructure, so we'll see. But in the meantime, our committees are going to work on these infrastructure bills, and we'll be passing those later this year.
Ridgely, West Virginia. Madeline, Republican. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I just want to say I am 89 years old. I have never in my lifetime seen our country in the shape it's in. And if people doesn't turn back and pray and ask God to straighten it out, the Democrats are going to bring our country to disaster.
Thank you for your comment.
Margie in Philadelphia, Democrat. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. I am all for impeachment, and impeachment should be the Constitution of the United States. That's why he's been impeached, for high crimes and misdemeanors. And as far as the Democrats the Republicans keep calling in on the Democrat line, they call in on all three lines, and C-SPAN does nothing about it. First thing out their mouth, I'm a Democrat, but I was a Democrat, but I'm a Republican. Then they start to go on and talk about how, it's just ridiculous. And Trump said he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. These are the people on Fifth Avenue that's saying it's okay, go on and shoot me.
That's Margie in Philadelphia this morning. Margie on the phone lines. This show only works if people do call in on the correct lines, and we do try to rotate through the lines to get a lot of different views. We trust our callers to try to play by the rules here to have this conversation. But Congressman Ted Lieu, on the high crimes that the caller was talking about.
So thank you for this, the question you raised. Again, I wanted to note that This is not a partisan issue. It should not be a partisan issue. It really is an American issue and a constitutional issue. The president here cut off critical military aid to Ukraine, which was helping to push back against one of our adversaries. They were helping protect our national security. No one disputes that Donald Trump halted that military aid. That's just a fact. A week later, there's this phone call where Donald Trump, right after the Ukrainian leader raises the issue of military aid, Trump requests a favor. One of those favors is to investigate his political opponent, Biden. That's not disputed because the White House's own rough transcript of the call says exactly that. So these are just facts you can't dispute. That's why you have Republicans now supporting this impeachment inquiry, including 2 Republican governors. And you see, when you ask American people this question, now a majority do support the impeachment inquiry because they are reading these documents themselves. They can read the whistleblower complaint. It's online. You can read the raw transcript of the phone call. It's online. And then you can make your own decision. But these are very grave facts.
Congressman Ted Lieu is a Democrat from California. Always appreciate your time. Come back again.